UFC 315 went down in Quebec last night, and it was definitely a card that over-delivered. One of my favorite cards of the year so far. We're going to hand out 6 Superlative Awards to the fighters. We will be handing out an award to the most valuable fighter, the fighter most likely to be cut, the most improved fighter on the card, an agent of chaos, the biggest letdown at UFC 315, and a fighter or fight that got snubbed for a bonus. There is no one more deserving for the MVF, most valuable fighter, than Della Maddalena. On the winning side of one of the best fights of the year so far, JDM touches gold in only his 8th UFC fight. JDM's takedown defense looked impeccable, and even when he did get taken down by Belal in the 5th round, he immediately got back up to his feet and started landing damaging shots that stole the round from Belal. Now, I have absolutely no idea what JDM's coaches were trying to tell him in the 5th round, where if he just lasted 5 more minutes, he was going to become a champion. Because if he lost that round to Belal and just ended up laying on bottom, he would have lost a split decision. So props to JDM for having that dog in him, being able to swing until the end, putting on a show for all of the fans, and becoming UFC champion at only 28 years old. Now, the fighter most likely to be cut at UFC 315 is Bruno Silva. Silva has lost his last 5 fights, and he also missed weight this past weekend in Quebec. And it's a shame, because I remember when Bruno Silva came into the UFC, knocked 3 guys out in a row, and people were like, oh, you gotta watch out for this Bruno Silva guy. And then he faced Alex Pereira, and since then, he has gone 1-7 in his last 8. Seeing him get carted out on a stretcher was super scary, and I honestly hope that Bruno just retires after this and calls it a career after 36 pro fights. UFC 315's most improved fighter is Canada's own Jasmine Jasdavicius. I've seen Jasmine fight before, and she's able to break down these girls over time and has picked up 2 third-round finishes in the last 5 fights. But never have I seen her come out with the level of hunger and aggression that she did against Jessica Andrade. She made the former champion look like an amateur, and we've seen Andrade finish before. But it took Blanchfield a couple rounds, it took Tatiana Suarez a couple rounds, it even took Valentina Shevchenko a couple rounds to take Jessica Andrade out of there. But not Jasmine. Jasmine puts the Brazilian away early and picks up her first UFC first round finish. Jasmine is right on the cusp of a title shot, so I think Canada has finally found their women's UFC star. UFC 315's Agent of Chaos is none other than Marc-Andre Barriault. The power bar had his back against the wall in his home country, having lost 3 in a row and his last 2 having been finished in the first round. So Marc-Andre knew how bad he needed this win, and he fought like it, being so aggressive, pushing forward, and when he was in the clinch, his plan wasn't to lay on Bruno Silva, it was to throw nasty elbows that ended up sending him to the hospital and leaving the octagon on a stretcher. This was the Marc-Andre that I remember. The one who had a fight of the night against Eric Anders, the one who slept Jordan Wright with a mounted guillotine, and put Julian Marquez away with a TKO. Looking to turn his career back in the right direction, he ended up getting a performance bonus and was easily UFC 315's Agent of Chaos. The biggest letdown at UFC 315 was Jose Aldo's surprise retirement. When news broke out about how difficult the weight cut was for Aldo, and that the fight with Zahabi was moving up to featherweight, I didn't think this was going to be the last time we saw Aldo. I thought this would be the last time he ever fought at bantamweight or attempted to, but I didn't expect him to retire at the end of the fight. If you had told me a few years ago that the former champion and UFC Hall of Famer would have his last 3 UFC fights go against Jonathan Martinez, Mario Bautista, and Ayman Zahabi, I would have thought you were absolutely crazy. But the UFC did the legend dirty, and now he's retired without a proper send-off. I really hope the UFC is able to bring him back for one more in Rio against another legend in a fight where he can just get a proper send-off and get respected for who he was and what he gave back to the company. Your bonus snub for UFC 315 was easily Mike Malott. Canada's own golden boy avenges his loss to Neil Magny a year and a half before and finishes Charles Radke in the 2nd round. Mallett's technique looked on point, and any time he would land with any significance on Radke, the crowd would roar behind him. The crowd is erupting when he's landing that nasty ground and pound that puts Radke unconscious, and he had by far the most heartfelt interview where he talked about how important it was for him to fight for these Canadian fans. So I was pretty shocked to see that they ended up snubbing Mike Malott for a bonus. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Let me know in the comments what you thought of UFC 315 and who you think deserves these Superlative Awards. Check us out on Instagram and TikTok, where I post the Barn Burner Gazette every week to highlight the upcoming fight card, and like and subscribe to check out more videos in the future. I hope you have a great day.